All right, so I'm not sure if you guys can see me or not, uh, but so should we go or should we just end it?
Pop out the chat.
Oh yeah. So let me know if you can see me post something. But anyway, so what was I talking about? Oh, the vibrato. So what I've been for a long time, because of my singing background, looks like it, well, it's okay. Will it be there afterwards? Will it record it so you can see it? Okay. So for a long time, I started noticing that voice vibrato is not created equal. Not all vibrato is created equal when it comes to the singing voice. And so when I play things like that, where I have to hold a very long note, and with the crescendo, what I realized, you can use your vibrato to help yourself. Now, you have to be very careful doing this, because if you have a really great control of your vibrato and it doesn't interrupt your sound, then this is a fantastic tool to increase the effect of that, long crescendo and diminuendo, because what you can do, that's what I instinctively started doing. I would start without vibrato. And I believe that makes the sound a little bit less strange, and it sounds a little bit more natural. Because if you really pay attention to what the singers do, you will be amazed. And of course, pop singers do that all the time, and they exaggerate that. But even in classical singing, and even if you sing yourself, you'll notice that when you start singing, at first your voice kind of takes a little bit before it starts to vibrate. And sometimes you do it on purpose right away. But all those little things that make those little tiny nuances, once you master everything in your bow, if you want to go a little bit extra mile and really make it outrageously amazing, you could experiment with your vibrato. In fact, I remember Maxim Vengerov had a master class, and he was talking about how the bow speed is very actually organically connected with the speed and the type of the vibrato you're using, and it really is. So, but again, you have to be very careful, because what happens if you're not, especially when you're playing for an audition and under stress, if you think of deliberately not vibrating and starting after you're already bowing, what happens if you squeeze, it might shake your bow. So that is kind of a really high level, high class kind of task. But if you want to just make it a challenge for your daily practice and really help yourself, like, to really go to the next level of mastering the bow distribution and the sound control and the bow control and vibrato control and this etude, this is a great way to do that. Again, when you make sure that when you trill, that I mentioned no vibrato zone at the beginning of this session, and that's important, that you deliberately turn off any kind of desire to vibrate when you play your trill, because that will actually help it sound cleaner, and it will relax your hand. Because sometimes I think after vibrating those long notes, and you get to the trill, and your hand still instinctively thinks, oh, should I vibrate or not? So if you deliberately just remember that on the trills, just make it completely no vibrato zone, it will be very helpful, because that will be a time for you to relax your hand and to rest. The rhythm, again, I mentioned at the beginning, the rhythm is very important. It took me a while, and I thought I was doing it right. Then I listened, I was like, oh my goodness, I am playing 2 dotted rhythms. It's only one. So that is very important. What are other things? Yes, another extremely, extremely challenging thing in that Fiorillo is your intonation on the descending, diminished chord little arpeggio passages. And that's why I was talking about the scales at the beginning. And if you actually know how to play 7 kinds of arpeggios in your scales, then you will know what I'm talking about. And if you don't know what it is, actually, flesh scales, the flesh scales that were, oh, I now know that I can actually type. So here it is. So Carl Flesh, I believe that's how you spell his name, or with it C, but there it is. So Carl Flesh scales. He actually writes out all 7 types of arpeggios for every scale. And so the 6th type is the diminished chord. And I highly recommend that you adopt that type of arpeggio into your daily practice, because it is extremely difficult to hear that chord if you don't know. It's this kind of, in Bach's time, he almost got in trouble for using it. It's that chord that Bach used all the time. It sounds like this. Real scary. Remember, he uses it a lot in his music. Basically, it's all minor thirds. And the reason it sounds so really intense, because you end up having 2 tritones kind of on top of each other. And so because of the presence of tritones, that means that your hand, even if you're staying in the same position, is not, remember we talked about lateral movements of your fingers. When your finger change from one string to another, they most likely will either stretch or squeeze, but they won't go to exactly the same spot on the other string. And that's what makes, so you end up kind of crawling up and down your fingerboard, even if you're staying in the same position. Another difficulty with this is that because all the intervals are exactly the same, your ear becomes confused, it can't hear that, the harmonic implications of that, because it can be resolved into so many different keys. And unless you practice it every day or play it every day or sing it every day or listen to it every day, and you really get that sound ingrained in your mind, it is extremely difficult to even, as you're playing, to judge, am I in tune or am I not in tune? And this is why I told you I kind of was a little bit mischievous with the Fiorillo 8 and devious a little bit, but all to help you guys to make this easier. And so watch out for my next video coming up with Fiorillo, because I think what I added something to that I think you find makes it much more fun. First of all, count. I'll tell you my deep dark secret. I hate counting. I mean, I don't hate the fact that we have rhythm in music. It's wonderful, but I just get so bored counting. So this is my way of helping you to make the counting much more fun, and also helping you to hear that harmonic context of these chords. So it's a little easier to know whether you're playing in tune or not. Okay. Hi, Havoc. Great name. So you're asking, when did you start playing? I started playing when I was 7. And so I've been playing violin for over 40 years. My debut, my first official performance concert with orchestra was when I was 9. At the age of 9, I performed the Vivaldi Concerto as a soloist with the Moscow Chamber Orchestra back when it used to be Soviet Union. And I was just hooked to playing with orchestra since then. I think that's my favorite way to perform, is to perform solo pieces with orchestra, but I love playing anything and everything. Havoc is asking, did you want to start, or were you kind of forced to play? Oh, great question. Well, I come originally from what used to be Soviet Union, and the music education was amazing there. It was different than here. The culture, all the parents knew that, basically it was traditional. You started young, 7, not 4 or 3 necessarily, but just like 6 or 7 years old. And of course, at that age, I mean, what kid would think of going and enrolling themselves into a music school and taking lessons? Of course, it depended on parents, but so of course my mom, she really, really wanted me to study music, but I don't feel like I was forced to, she was initiated the fact that my dad went and signed me up, and I was signed up for music school. But I remember since the first time I started playing violin, I knew I was going to be a violinist. So, and I have to say, of course, I loved playing, but I hated practicing for a very long time. So in that case, yes, my parents had to force me in a way. I mean, you can't really force a child to practice, but they had to, keep on this, I guess, stay on my case. So I practice and give me a hard time if I didn't, and try to make incentives if I did. I had in that music school system that I mentioned, we had 2 private lessons, so 2 hours of private lessons every week. But my mom also, she hired a coach, because the teacher said, oh, your daughter is very, very talented, but she doesn't practice at all. So she needs more supervised, practicing. And so basically, I also had 2 more hours a week with a coach, resulting in 4 private lessons, an hour each every week. And that is during summer times too. And so that really, I'm very grateful for that, because I always loved playing. I grew up backstage because I was traveling. My mom and my dad, I mentioned, they were singers, but they were in a kind of a rock band. And so I traveled with them, and I grew up backstage, watching them sing and watching. It was just phenomenal. I sang all the songs, danced, everything backstage. It was like super fun traveling with the band. And so I loved the stage since I was little. I always wanted to be on stage, and I was very happy to play and to perform. But of course, I never wanted to practice. It seemed boring to me, and I didn't know how to practice well until I was much older. So in that case, yes, you can say my parents had to force me to do that. But I'm so grateful, and that actually is very important, because there was a very famous teacher back in the old Soviet Russia, and when the parents came to him and they brought a child to take lessons, he would let the parents would leave. He would just have the child one-on-one with him, because he wanted an honest answer. And he would ask that child, do you want to play violin, or do your parents want you to play violin? And if the child said, it's just me, he wouldn't take that child. He will only take children who told him that their parents wanted them to play. Because at that level, obviously, at that age, when they were 6 or 7, it was obvious without support of the parents, it's very, very difficult to do. However, there are people who do that, and I'm just amazed at those. So, so has there ever been a time when you wanted to stop playing? Yes. Well, yes and no. I willingly, like, as I said, I hated practicing. And there were some days when I just hated practicing, and I was I would just kind of say, I wish I just want to quit this stupid violin. I don't want to ever, but not because I couldn't. I loved playing too much, and I loved being on stage, and it was just so much fun. But, and I'm a very musical, naturally person, because I have very musical genes from my parents. I think what it was, I just hated practicing. I hated the fact, all the discipline that came with it. And I hated, we lived in these 6-story apartments, and I would be practicing, and I would watch all my friends running around playing games, down there outside, and I would have to practice. And of course, as a kid, what kid doesn't hate that? But after a while, so that part, yes, sometimes I wished I would just quit, but I don't think I could ever, even though I threatened, I would throw fits, and tell my parents, I'm going to quit this stupid violin. But I don't think I could ever quit it. I love playing too much. But yes, practicing is a hard discipline. It's hard to learn it. And so, but there was another time in my life that I actually willingly thought I had to stop playing. And that was when, I don't know if you know this, some of you might know this, guys, but my mother and I, we came here in 1993 because we had to run for our lives. We were in danger of ethnic persecution. There was severe ethnic persecution, and we basically had to drop everything and come here. And as refugees, we were invited by the government of the US, and I'm very, very grateful for that. And so when we came here, shortly after I came here, I had my degree from Moscow Conservatory, and I was already 25, and for for a professional performer, it's difficult to start all over in a different country, especially since it was in Europe, so it was so far from where I grew up. So I didn't have any connections. And then very shortly after I came here, about a couple of years, I got married and I had children. I was super happy. But after that, trying to get back into the swing of things and having to support my children, I had some doubts whether I could really find a job as a musician that would support me and my 3 children. By then we divorced and I was a single mom by then. And so I remember I went back to school. I got my master's in Oklahoma because that's where I was at the time. And then I thought, well, a lot of people tell me, well, there's no way you can ever support your family with music. I have three children. And so I thought, well, I guess I'm just going to go back. And they had this great program where you could go back for just 1 or 2 semesters, since I already had a master's degree from OU, and get a master's in accounting. Because I just called them and said, what is the best job placement that you have degrees in? This accounting. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go get the book. I had to get ready for some tests. And I remember I went to this college, it's just a community college, and I got this GMAT books and whatever. And so that very evening I had a rehearsal in the orchestra where I was working at the time. And that day, one of my friends said, well, you just finished your master's. Are you going to go back for doctorate? I'm like, I don't know. I have to think, because I know I'm going to take 1 year off and then see what happens. And she was like, no, if you take 1 year off, you'll never go back. So she grabbed my arm and she got me to this, the 2 professors that were at OU at that time that were also in the orchestra. And they told me that they actually had 4 assistantships open, graduate assistantships for doctoral studies at OU. And one of them was phenomenal. She's a phenomenal violinist. I was so happy she was there, Felicia Moy. She was the first violinist of Miami String Quartet when they won all of their important competitions, and a wonderful person, phenomenal violinist, phenomenal teacher. And so that meant, assistantship meant that I got full ride and I got actually paid for going to school. And so that's when I felt like God told me, no, you're not doing accounting, you're going back and you're going to be a violinist. And I'm very grateful for that. So that was really the time where I almost switched. And now I'm thinking that was so stupid because I would have been the worst accountant ever. Okay, so another question for having, and do you still maintain contacts to old friends from your home? Oh, that's a wonderful, yes. Half of our family came here as refugees and the other half stayed there. So definitely we talked to them, but they had to move from our original place where we lived, because obviously, but they just moved within the former USSR, and now it's its own country, Ukraine. And then I do have friends all over the world now, which is fun. A lot of them are musicians, and we actually collaborate on things. I have never been back to Moscow. Obviously, I've never been back to my homeland, which is again for fear of persecution. Although I have a lot of friends there who actually helped us escape, who were the actual nationality of that land, but they were good friends. So with that, I've never been back. In Moscow, I am excited because finally, it looks like in November next year, I will be able to go back and I will be performing at a conference there. And, so as far as going back, no, this will be my first time going back if that happens. But I do have wonderful colleagues that I not communicate only, but because a lot of them also came here, and that we collaborate. And one of my friends would do this really fun program called East Meets West, that we just played in several big universities last year, where we actually play your standard Western European repertoire, but also the music from our land, which is really, really fun. So thank you for this question. Yes. Well, guys, I think we've done pretty good with our session today. Before we close, I would like to encourage you to find out more about the boot camp that I keep talking about. And also, I wanted to mention, actually, you also can have an opportunity to win a 30-minute private lesson with me. And just click on the link below that will tell you about that. And then I'm glad it was fun. That's what music is supposed to be in teaching. You guys have wonderful time practicing. I can't wait to post that video Fiorillo 8. I'm very excited about it. I think it came out pretty fun and pretty good, and I think it will be a great resource for you. And while the boot camp is on, I will be having these lives every week, so I hope to see you next week and get your questions ready. And thank you again so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.